you. So, taking the last slot, this is sort of didn't know what was going to come up, so this is necessarily a bit impressionistic. So I'll just sort of whiz through a bunch of things, some thoughts. One is some of the demographic issues. Anytime I show this, it gets a big reaction. So more than particularly anything immediate is just the collapse in the 20-something population over the past 7 years. So if you've been able to get into a club or you found more seats in bar stools, it's not just because the economy's gone down. It's because there's been a 1/3 collapse in the number of 20-somethings in just 7 years. Now, this is mostly to do with the decline of the number of births after 1980, but it's the migration effect and also the aging of the Polish, Lithuanian immigrants after 2004 has had an impact on this as well. But okay, in the medium term, for a country that sells itself as having a young, educated workforce, this is a potential concern that as the labour market tightens again, we may simply not have the numbers of people that may be needed. And also later on, further out from the next government, but when this cohort gets into its prime earning stage, that's going to have an impact on both economic growth and on the fiscal side. So a more immediate thing is ending pro-cyclicality. Okay, we know that we've been really bad at that every time we've had a bubble, we've spent more at the government level, and then we go into austerity. So it will be a great thing the next time we have a downturn to allow the automatic fiscal stabilizer to kick in, or even imagine that we might have the capacity to actually stimulate the economy when we take a dip, cut taxes and increase spending as a way of, instead of amplifying the cycle, that we actually smooth it out. So how would we go about doing that? Well, unfortunately, a counter-cyclical fiscal policy means running bigger surpluses in good times. So let's just look at what the countries I admire, not for social democratic reasons, just because they're smart, which is Northern European countries, what did they do at the peak of the last cycle? Now, if you look at the size of the budget surpluses that were being run in Finland, Denmark, Sweden, when we all knew these were good times, economies were growing well, there was a good sort of uptick in growth in Europe at that time, nothing spectacular. But as you see, none of those economies were growing in any way as fast as Ireland, yet they all had much bigger surpluses. They were all in a much better position to deal with the downturn when it came. So certainly the last budget does not suggest to me that, and particularly what happened in just the days before the last budget when the spring statement was effectively thrown out, that does not say to me that we're moving into a change mentality where we're prepared to run surpluses in good times so that we have the wherewithal to avoid the old pro-cyclical mistakes of the past. Okay, also just another thing worth highlighting, I'm not nearly as convinced the public finances are doing as well as is often portrayed. We get this sort of thing, everything's fine, everything's growing, okay, well, one reason for that is because we tend to focus, and the government tends, and the media tends to focus on the Exchequer returns. If I had a small technical policy position to advocate, it would be that we abandon the Exchequer finances. They are a complete mess on the expenditure side. Nobody understands them. They don't tell us anything. They miss out a huge amount. Okay, and the fact that now we have data that are comparable with the rest of Europe, we have to compile data that are on an accruals basis rather than a cash basis, which the Exchequer returns are on. And these are put together both by the Department of Finance, in fairness to it, but also the CSO are obliged to do so as along Eurostat rules. And let's just look at the recent trends in public sector revenue. Now, this takes in everything, not just the Exchequer stuff, which is about two-thirds of the public sources of revenue. So you can see there has been a slowdown in the growth in government revenue, despite talk of this big upswing in the economy. Sure, there's an upswing in the economy, things are going very well, but in the first half of this year, general government budget revenues, that is the widest measure of measuring public expenditure and revenue, shows that there was only a 3.1% increase over the first half of last year. Now, that's good, but it's certainly not spectacular. So the notion that the public finances and the Exchequer coffers are overflowing, I just caution against that. Okay, let's just look at longer term spending issues. We all know that per capita spending, public expenditure has fallen in quite unprecedented way since the recession. Everyone is absolutely clear about that. Let's just show a couple of measures, though, over the last 20 years about what's happened. So I've taken out the bank costs here. So we see there's been about a 6 billion decline in the headline rate of total government expenditure. We take out interest, which most of it goes out, or a good lot of it goes out of the country. The fall has been bigger. And then the lower line will show that really the big area of non-interest expenditure that was cut was capital expenditure. Okay? So one other point I take from that is that if you look where we are now and you go back 10 years, growth in spending in Ireland is still one of the highest in Europe. So over a 10-year period, growth has, even with the massive austerity that we've had, growth has been high. Just worth pointing that out. You can see how quickly public expenditure did rise in the period up to the boom, the crash. So jobless households. To my mind, this is one of the big social, economic issues of our time. We've got very high levels of jobless households, whichever way you measure it. And this is a real problem. So effectively, we're excluding a large chunk of our citizens from participation in work and all of the negative things that comes with that. So earlier on, Ronan was talking about issues around training. Could not agree more. That's the weakness in our education system and the preschool thing. Let's just look at this, this across the OECD in terms of how we help families with the welfare system. Now, you see Ireland is way up there in terms of cash payments, but what's really interesting is that it's cash payments and the relative to services. So that comes back to this point about preschooling, helping people who need it most, rather than giving billionaires child benefit. Okay, so switching around, switching money away from direct benefits over to services is a crucial part in dealing with that, with this issue of jobless households. Okay, so some miscellaneous things. World economy. Okay, big risks there. The U.S. Is the U.S. going to turn down the sugar rush? Has this been an extended sugar rush with what the Federal Reserve has been doing? I think it's a hard one to know. China, big issues there, and the worst case scenario is clearly very serious. So there are a lot of big issues out there. I know everyone here is feeling, after such a long period of bad times, we're kind of happy to think that everything's going well, but clearly as a globalized and very open economy, there are big risks to us. If things turn down, I certainly can't rule that out and having implications for us even in the short term. Brexit, that hasn't gone away. I suppose everybody's tired of hearing that, but that could well be an issue for the government. In my view, it will be very early on in the next government's life. That will be back on the agenda. Brexit. Here's a sort of very big issue with lots of consequences. I think the government has been pretty proactive on this. There's a department within the Department of Taoiseach, there's a little unit within the Department of Taoiseach focusing on this now, which is positive. So they are focusing on it. One thing I'd advocate, I think we should be more open with the British and say to them, look, we'd love you to stay, but if you're going to leave, we have to mitigate the costs. So we are rolling out the red carpet to any company that's based in Britain, British or non-British, come over here. If you service the European market, we will give you certainty. We're not doing that to poach, but we're simply saying to you that you know it's a risk that companies will leave, and we are saying to them, we will be very badly affected if Britain does leave in a whole range of ways, and we're going to mitigate that. We don't want to be unfriendly. I know some diplomats think that the British would react very badly to that, and maybe that's true, but I think it's certainly something that could be thought about by the next government. Northern Ireland. I thought somebody was going to speak on that here, so I just threw something in. Will the institutions fail? I'd like to just sort of put out a thought here. No bad thing. Okay? I'm not sure the Good Friday Agreement in the institutional framework has worked very well. And let's just remember, Good Friday Agreement happened because there was peace, not the other way around. I think people often sort of confuse that. So if you went back to a sort of direct rule with very close involvement of the Irish government, which may well happen, the institutions may not survive, they've been teetering for a long time, that may not be such a bad thing. Okay? But that may need to be managed. And then over the longer term, the issue of higher interest rates. If within the next couple of years we get some sort of normalization of interest rates because of the high levels of debt, still high levels of debt in the Irish economy, both corporate, household and the state, the impact could be, well, if you had even had a normalization, let's say if base rates go up by 3 percentage points, the effect on the Irish economy would be very, very big. Department of Finance, even in its own projections for just small changes in the interest rate, recognises how big an impact it would be. So if we have the upside of a more normal European economy and we grow, and interest rates normalise over the next 2 to 3 years, the next government, provided it lasts a full term, could well be faced with a really big challenge from increases in interest rates as at the back end of the next term. Okay. Thank you.